Welcome. My name is Noelle.
I'm Violet, and we are your MCs for 14 East Live.
While tonight we are seated safely in this theater, we recognize that not everyone is as fortunate and able to have secure safety right now. We are saddened to see the unfortunate events happening around the world. Many people, including fellow journalists, have lost their lives during this devastating humanitarian crisis. This, plus the unfortunate events that transpired on campus last week, have brought distress to the DePaul and greater Chicago community. We as community members acknowledge the suffering surrounding our community. Let us take a moment of silence for the many suffering.
Thank you. Whether you're here speaking tonight, supporting somebody speaking tonight, or you just came to listen to some amazing stories, on behalf of 14 East, we thank you for joining us.
Tonight we are presenting 8 unique stories told by members of the 14 East staff and students of the Reporting for 14 East class. All of the stories brought to you tonight center on one theme: rejection.
Now, moving on to our audience guidelines, we want to inform you that this year's show theme surrounding rejection, some of the stories told this evening may bring up strong emotions. Therefore, if you need to take some time and leave and come back, you're fine to do so. We will provide a trigger warning for stories that are a little bit more intense.
Everyone in this room has experienced rejection. Some of us fear rejection, while others thrive off rejection. Regardless of how we feel about it, rejection is a much part of everyday life. Tying your shoes, brushing your teeth, missing the red line as it pulls away from the station. You know, we've all been there.
Everyone has a story that comes to mind when they hear the word rejection. Tonight, we're lucky enough to hear 8 fantastic stories exploring this theme. From learning the rules of rejection to reframing it completely, we've got a great show for you tonight.
Our speakers aren't the only one who will have a chance to explore rejection. During our intermission, we invite all of you to reflect on our theme and your shot at winning a prize, one of our 3 prizes from a quiz that we made just for you. We're so excited for our show, so please sit back and relax and enjoy 14 East Live.
To begin our show, we have Ellie Shelton, who is a junior from Muskego, Wisconsin. Ellie chose to participate in 14 East Live because it gave her the opportunity to get out of her comfort zone, while also writing and performing something that she wouldn't usually cover.
Like any well-adjusted 20-year-old woman, I have rejected and I have been rejected. Countless salty tears of McDonald's Diet Coke became my lifeline after rejection from boys I loved, girls I wanted to be friends with, and teachers who just didn't like me. Those who know me well know that I have a tendency to squeeze my way into people's lives, settling myself idly between the crosshairs of their existence. I have loved and lost so many times that my heart is scattered across the states, from a lost friend in Milwaukee to an old high school friend of me in Florida. I am no stranger to rejection. Years of no's and you're just not what I'm looking for have led me to a set of rules I follow. A quick disclaimer, these rules are ambiguous, and they certainly have little basis in reality. However, despite their shortcomings, I have gotten through heartbreak and college admissions and denial with these 4 simple rules. After all, rejection is simply redirection. It's simply whether or not you choose to rule it as such. Rule number 1, do not under any circumstances hate someone because they are too similar to you. My best friend and I spent the first 3 weeks of our first quality time in a constant stalemate. Sharing the same name as someone sounds fun until you're 14, have transitional glasses, a deep passion for musical theater, and a hunger for a varsity spot on the golf team. While I thought she was the coolest, she thought I hated her, and thus hated me in return. We were about as nerdy as they come, more similar than anyone else on our team, but still decided that because the other was too similar, being friends was out of the cards. Forced conversations, pointed glares, and jealous practices defined our time together for the first month of our unintentional friendship. Weeks after beginning our stalemate, in a large cafeteria that held 100 other students, I found myself standing directionless. Peeking around the open area for a familiar face, I began to panic. Suddenly, through the sea of anonymous faces judging my skinny jeans and floral top, I see a high ponytail and a blue backpack I could recognize anywhere. Sneaking up behind her, I pull up the chair beside her and ask, "The seat taken?" With a sigh of relief, Ellie invites me in, and the rest is history. I spent 6 incredible years with Ellie as my best friend. Many see us as inseparable, designating us Ellie squared. I often wonder what would have happened if I had never overcome my fear of rejection that day in the cafeteria. Who would I even be without Ellie, the girl who knows what to say so well, I have dubbed her my personal AI chatbot. Ellie's openness and rejection of fear has taught me the importance of throwing myself into people's lives without regret, More importantly, to never reject someone due to your own insecurity, for your worst enemy may be your best friend. Rule number 2, be loud and annoying. Those who reject you aren't your friends. I have a tendency to embarrass myself in public. A lack of social awareness from a young age will do that to somebody. I love to dance and sing and make a fool of myself no matter where I am, and it's always been that way. So growing up, I had my fair share of moments where I embarrassed myself along with my friends. Abby and I had been best friends since 4th grade. I followed her every move, joining musicals, soccer, and taking similar middle school electives just to get a portion of her coolness. After years of endless hours in cafeterias dancing for our musical, I knew I'd finally clinched Abby as a best friend. I was thrilled to head into high school with her. We were finally becoming adults, despite the owl pencil case I was still using. I couldn't wait to make new friends with her and find new hobbies. So, you can imagine my surprise when Abby quickly took to finding me outrageously upsetting to be around. A course of, Ellie, stop. Why are you trying to be embarrassing right now? And my personal favorite, could you be normal for one day? Why are you always so loud? Started to dictate our time spent together. As most post-high school young adults can say, I wish I had the courage to have stood up for myself and recognize or even embrace her rejection at that age. However, at 14, denial tends to be the easiest option. So, I spent 4 years waiting for the softcore bullying to stop. It never did. There is no big blow-up moment in which I finally told Abby, we're done, but how cool would that have been? Instead, in typical high school fashion, Abby and I grew slowly apart until we eventually ceased all communication. That is, until I ran into her at my local Target, standing in front of me, eyes wide with terror. Separation quickly removed the rose-colored glasses from our relationship as I realized the bullying I had endured from my best friend for years under the guise of the black cat golden retriever trope that, by the way, only I ever said about us. I've learned from my favorite people that those who want to be your friend will love your terrible jokes, your booming voice, and your terrible dance moves. Weirdly enough, they actually encourage it. Those who don't, never will. Cut them loose and accept rejection. Rule number 3. Just because you aren't picked for something doesn't mean your work meant nothing. As a COVID senior, I was thrilled by the prospect of going anywhere but Muskego, Wisconsin. So I was very excited when I found 2 large state schools that felt like the perfect fit. They had therapy dogs on campus, incredible meal plans, and great programs. I was ready to apply and had an inkling I would get in. My first mistake. Being a senior during COVID meant having to live in delusion in a lot of ways, but in this case, I had to believe I would get into the schools I liked, despite the influx of large applicant pools. Spoiler alert, I got rejected. Like a lot. Sitting on the counter of my high school dressing room before going on stage for my last musical, I opened a decision letter from 4 separate schools. Rejected, unfortunately. Please try again. All lined my inbox. I told no one. Put my phone down, wiped a stray tear, and walked outside to sing. There is no ego hit like a college rejection when you think you're a shoo-in. As I ran through my application essay, 13 clubs, many of which I led, and stellar GPA, I could not understand why I'd put so much work in. After all, if the ends don't bring me what I hoped for, why justify the means? I was rejected from almost every school I was interested in. I felt horrible, like the endless nights and tears over a varsity meet or a missed high note didn't mean anything. I walked into an old teacher's room and spoke with her about my rejection. What was the point, I asked. In those 4 years and 13 clubs, did you ever have a good time, she asked. I stared confused for a while. Of course I had. I met my very best friend through golf, placed in the top 3 in the state for forensics, found a love for music and musicals. The benefits were endless. One essay and a piece of paper will never be able to define the experience you had. You didn't do those things for so long just to build a resume. You did them out of passion, for friendship, for yourself. Those words have rung true as I have continued to fail and be rejected time and time again. My time is worth more than just an end goal. Rejection does not define my being. Rule number 4. Do not stay because you think rejection will kill someone. It won't. I spent 3 years of my early adulthood in a long-distance relationship. My first 2 years of college were defined by late-night phone calls, time zone differences, and long train trips to a small college town in Indiana. After 3 wonderful years with a boy who lived hundreds of miles away, we began to grow apart in ways that couldn't be repaired. Disconnecting from someone you told were perfect for you by everybody is frankly terrifying. Not enough people are talking about it. Spent around 6 months trying to rebuild a relationship on grounds that were no longer solid. Grasping for anything I could to regain the connection we once had, I would cry and scream and beg for him to love me in a way that I needed without ever realizing he couldn't give that to me. Realizing someone is rejecting you while you're in a relationship is almost scarier than getting rejected right away. It's confusing, it's unfair, and doesn't make much sense when you're trying to get on the same page as somebody. Rather than confronting it, I shut him down and shut him out. Communication was non-existent. I would leave him on red, ignore calls, and make plans around our usual call time to ignore the fact that he was rejecting me, whether or not he realized it. After a half year of the awkward limbo of trying to salvage a relationship that was dead in the water, I knew it was time. We were hurting each other, and what was once a wonderful friendship was now ruined. Even though I knew he didn't want to be in the relationship, I wasn't sure he did. So I waited and stewed on my decision for months. Finally, on a dark winter night after a family Christmas party, I turned to him and said, "I think we'd be better as friends." Legs shaking and tears welling in my eyes, I watched as my then boyfriend stared at me. After an eternity of silence, he smiled and said, "Me too." Rejection can bring pain, it can bring despair, however it also brings relief. There have been many times in my life where I've declined to reject somebody to save their own ego, with both parties feeling cheated in the end. While my breakup wasn't easy and still has its struggles, my rejection led to a better understanding of my own ego, self-worth, and needs. This isn't a story in which I find someone who is perfect for me after my ex. Sometimes rejection leads you to outcomes you don't prefer. I loved my ex deeply and have a wonderful relationship with him. However, the truth does not cease to exist when you reject it. We were not right for each other. Finding peace within rejection has been liberating. After years of fearing rejection and despairing over the possibility of a no, I've found it's really just never that deep. If there's one thing I've learned from my rejections, it's that all of the best things in life require a degree of rejection. Breakups come with pints of Ben and Jerry's, but they also bring you the richest friendships you've ever had. Rejection letters cause teary-eyed nights, but they bring you to a new school with your best friends. Lost friends come with palpable loneliness, but they also lead you to heroic individualism. These things are terrible, but they are also good. They can be ambiguous and exist as both in our lives. It is innately human to reject our own rejection. However, rejection is not fatal, it is not defining, and it is not failure. We must feel rejection to grow as people. We cannot expect success without also feeling rejection. If you yearn to reap the benefits of love, of friendship, of life, you must also subject yourself to the possibility of being rejected. 4 rules will never cover the complexities of life. It is confusing, frustrating, ambiguous, and requires much more thought than my 20-year-old self could have given it. For now, though, I'll stick to my Diet Coke, my Ben and Jerry's, and my rules to handle whatever rejection is thrown my way.
Great job, Ellie. That was amazing. Next up, we have Claire Rooney, a junior from Louisville, Kentucky. When asked why she applied to be in 14 East Live, she said because she wanted to feel that sweet, sweet rejection once again. But then she got selected. So good
Hi, I'm Claire. I made an audio piece for 14 East Live. It's called Revive Your Darlings. And I was really just interested in asking people about the editing process and what they've had to reject while making some of the things that they love. So I hope you like it. I'm gonna go sit over here now.
Kill your darlings. It's a phrase that every writer has heard during the dreaded editing process. That perfect interview snippet, that line that works itself into the script that sums up the whole plot, the best bass solo you've ever heard. They're absolutely amazing works of art, and you're so proud of them. But there's not enough time in the broadcast. There isn't a reason for that character to be there in this scene. Or it's already too crowded in the mix to add anything else. Then the chopping block is rolled in, and your favorite bits have to end up on the cutting room floor. I want to revive your darlings. I asked some artist in my life, tell me what you wish could have made it. I wanted to know what they've left behind as they made these things that I've consumed as a fan, a student, and a friend.
Cool. How are we doing now? It's a little. There we go. Like that looks right.
Yeah. My professor, Connor, is a documentarian.
Killing your darlings is often very much a process of letting go of some of the instrumental things that started a project, but don't need to be there in the end.
We watched his short film, Imagine a Body, in class to talk about the editing process.
Imagine a Body was a film that is all about hormone replacement therapy, specifically testosterone, and takes a spiritual approach. The process of making that film was conducting, 7 interviews with different trans guys and having a conversation, all kind of surrounding testosterone, but then going on their own tangents about gender identity and our relationship to gender identity. And the process of editing was very weird. It was not how I usually edit a film, but it was really going through transcripts and brainstorming and a lot of writing and finding images that could go alongside those pieces in order to create something that could really feel like an expression of spiritual queerness.
Connor had to cut out a large portion of one of his best interviews for the project.
His name was Jordan Decker. He's an amazing human being. He's a pastor. He does a lot of incredible work with health resources and specifically helping trans people who are recovering from surgery. And he speaks amazingly. Like I said, he's like a Southern pastor. He has like a beautiful voice. It's just wonderful to listen to. He talks about having bottom surgery. And when you have bottom surgery, there's a skin graft that needs to get taken of your arm. They're pretty big and kind of gnarly. And his caretaker was not taught how to do bandages and didn't know how to do bandages, but he had some health practice, so he just did it himself. And he has this beautiful line about unwrapping the bandages, and the quote is, "I cried from the depths of my toenails, but not because I was sad or had any regrets, but because I recognized the sacrifice my divine feminine had to make for my divine masculine."
Later on, he found a perfect spot to revive his darling.
And I opened the film with him for a while, and I closed the film with him for a while. But in feedback sessions, we talked about his dialogue and how it was like almost too profound. Like he sort of stood out from the pack. And so in the final film, the only actual line he has in the film is talking about ass hair.
You know, I knew hair was gonna grow. I have no idea why we have ass hair. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
That's it. That's where he stayed. And it was really sad to say goodbye to, but we ended up having a conversation about it later, and I showed him the film, and I kind of explained, hey, you kind of just have this one throwaway line. But everything we talked about definitely informed the film as a whole. I still have that interview. I'm actually working on another piece that works solely with some of our conversation.
My roommate Jonas
Sorry. Oh, wait. Here. Hello.
is a playwright and a filmmaker. I was a test reader for their play/movie/short film called Homily.
It's mostly a process of addition in the beginning because, I went from a small kind of like for class project play to like a 1-act play to a 2-act play. And so that whole process was a lot of adding things to it. The short film that became Homily, Homily became a short film, and that short film is the first act of the play. There's this character called Jaleb, and they're a big part of the play, but they're not in the film at all. They represent a lot to Nelson as a character. They are like a big building block to turn Nelson to what he is in the moment that the show starts, the short starts. And not having that was weird to me.
Cam is my friend who runs a podcast called What I Will Say. She talks about all things regarding gossip, celebrity news, and mainly focuses on Taylor Swift.
Having to let go of Taylor Swift as this sort of activist icon has been, that's a darling I've had to kill off because she's not maybe 100% who I thought she was. And my listener base for my podcast, where we talk about Taylor Swift a lot, they're all sort of, everyone's frustrated at, she's shown a lot of apathy about politics lately, about, she's from Tennessee and there have been laws attacking the LGBT communities in Tennessee. She has, of course, not really said a word about the genocide going on in Palestine. And a lot of my listeners are really frustrated with that.
Throughout the years, she's had to think of Taylor Swift in a different way than she's used to.
And I have kind of had to publicly say, I've let activist Taylor Swift go. So I'm not expecting activist Taylor Swift as much as my darling as she used to be.
Killing your darlings is so funny because it's such violent language. It can be a violent experience, and then you add the language on top of it. But I think the beauty of that process is there's sort of a selflessness in it, and in letting go of those nuggets of a piece that we get really attached to, the project becomes less about you and you creating something great, and more about just whatever that project needs to be.
a third-year attending DePaul to get a dual degree in journalism and English with a concentration in creative writing. She's from Columbus, Ohio. Currently, Audrey is a senior associate editor for 14 East and the producer of the 14 East B-Sides podcast. Tonight, she is reading us her life's take on rejection. A trigger warning for those in the audience, this piece does mention self-harm and suicide.
It was difficult for me to make friends as a child. Others could walk up to someone and ask, "What's your favorite color?" or "What's your favorite animal?" and they would gallivant around the playground, holding hands or skipping rope, or drawing smiley faces with chalk on the blacktop. It wasn't so easy for me. I remember my first day of preschool. There were 2 girls playing with Barbies. I asked to join in, and they just stared at me so intensely, it stung. I was nothing to them. I was 5 years old, and they were too, and they were something to each other, and I was nothing to them. The rejection hardened like cement in my lungs. In elementary school, I didn't mesh with anyone. I wasn't nearly as strange then as I am now, but my peers would just call me names and put big love letters in my locker. The first love letter I got, it was genuine, I think. The boy who shoved it in my locker when someone pressed if it was him, said something like, "Ew, gross, not the fat girl." I was never called Audrey in the hall, only weirdo or creep. But during lunch, it was fatty and pig. I would throw away most of the lunches my mom or grandma would pack for me because I couldn't stand being stared at as I ate. I would chug the homemade chocolate milk out of its old red thermos, take a couple bites of my turkey sandwich, and then throw it all away. I don't remember much of middle school, but I do remember the reaction the sweetest girl in my grade had when I told her I was being called fat. She said she didn't understand that I was beautiful, that she'd kill to have my curves, but it was 2015, and the idea of someone being over 120 pounds being worthy of love was not a commonly held opinion. In high school, I realized I couldn't be my authentic self if I wanted to be liked. What was the point of being myself if I was alone? I started to listen to pop music, started to watch Friends, slathered my face in yellow foundation from the drugstore, and used way too dark contours and applied 3 too many coats of mascara that would just rub off after the first period. I straightened my hair instead of letting it wave from my scalp. I ditched my Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask backpack for a blank Jansport one. I tried, desperately tried, to be someone people would like, to have mass appeal. And it worked for a little while. I got a 19-year-old boyfriend at 15, was generally accepted, and was being called by my first name instead of weirdo. But just as life was treating me fairly, my boyfriend and I broke up, and I started to receive private messages on GroupMe from his friends telling me to slit my wrists and to kill myself. My sophomore year, I diluted myself even more extremely this time. I became just a girl in the most literal sense. I had no hobbies. I was nothing more than a fly on the wall. I calculated every interaction I had with someone else, concocting a personality fit for whoever I was speaking to. I was never going to be good enough for anyone in that school. I rejected myself, my whole being, and I left the person I was in the dust. I threw up everything I ate and drank too much coffee so I'd be too distracted by my racing heartbeat to be hungry. I wouldn't eat lunch, at most getting a snack from the vending machine. I dropped 25 pounds in 2 months. My family congratulated me. People at school and on the street were nicer to me. I felt like shit, sure, but I was being treated as a human being at least. My name was finally Audrey, and not weirdo or creep or fatty. When March 2020 rolled around, I was thrown for a loop. The pandemic left me alone in my bedroom. I only had myself and my dog. I only had the skin behind the makeup, the body underneath the clothes, the human. I started to eat again during that time. I started to cook and bake again. I found myself spending hours playing video games I hadn't touched in years. I felt comfortable. When classes were back on, though, I was back to being fat, with the added moniker of fag and carpet muncher thrown in. It wasn't fair. I had to reject my reflection to not be rejected by the masses. I had to disguise myself to be tolerable. I had to put on makeup and throw up everything and drink too much coffee and starve myself just to be recognized as human. It was bullshit. So I rejected the theory that I couldn't be myself. Sure, I was alone. I was in and out of psychiatric hospitals that year, but I was me. My mom taught me at a young age to be myself, and at my wise age of 18, I finally realized she was right. Since leaving Ohio, I've found friends who were not my friends, lovers who were not in love with me, family who found more joy in drugs than my company, that beer can't solve my problems, and that sometimes people suck. But in all of that, I found hope. I found love and friendship. I've found care. I found rejection in the mirror, and I accepted it. I'm not what has been taken from me. I'm what has been reinstated. I am what has been thrown against the wall and stuck. I know not to run from myself now. I know that I wasn't deserving of any of the bullying and the name-calling and harassment I received. I know I'm still the kind little girl who just wanted to play Barbies. I know I'm still the lonely girl who wondered why people didn't like her. I know I'm still the sad girl who couldn't figure out why people hated her. I'm still the loving, passionate, creative, kind person I've always been, but more authentic. I know that someday, just like those who called me names, I'll be dead and my bones will carry my memories. My bones will be made of kindness and love, but I don't think their bones can say the same.
I'd rather burn out than fade away.
coming up, we have Anna. Anna's from St. Louis. She's an associate editor for 14 East, and she decided to participate in this event because she's not stifled by the fear of judgment that usually makes it so hard to perform. In this environment, she feels free to prioritize sincerity over conventional appeal. Because our voices are recognized, respected, and appreciated, and she's able to create and share something that couldn't have existed otherwise. Here comes Anna.
I'm at a loss.
Just for a moment while I set up. Okay. So, at the end of the summer last year, I was doing my job. Very simple. Open beer, pour beer, give beer. Then, don't give beer after a certain time. Clean up, leave. It was painfully slow, dark, rainy day, and I was at the time where I couldn't serve anymore, so no one was coming up to help pass the time, and I decided to write in this journal. I was doodling and whatnot. These 3 guys storm in. I'm not dramatizing. I don't need to. They ask for beer. I say no. Sorry, I can't. Then he pulls out $100 and asks again. Can't say no to that, he said. I said no. I'll get fired if I serve you right now. So it's like a legal thing. Can't do it. Sorry. He looks at his friends like, and then he pulls out another $100. And he's like, you can't say no to this. And I said no. And then he said $300. Come on, 2 beers, $300. And I said, I'm not going to lose my job for $300. Why don't you just walk to a bar? There's so many. And he was like, no one's even around. $300 for 2 beers. That's the best deal of your life. Or whatever he said. I'm not going to do it, I say. And he's like, are you serious? You just made a huge mistake. And he goes, you're so stupid. And then he leaves. One, I'm so stupid. You wanted Miller Lite, so. So then they walk out, and I can feel my teeth are clenched, and my face is red, and the smoke is about to come out of my ears, I swear. I used to be an I don't really get mad person until all those years of frowns forced into smiles and screams I forced into silence. And that guy erupted into this intense awareness that I do get angry right there at that bar. I am and have been pissed off, but I would swallow it or convert it into something more acceptable like sadness or exhaustion. And I wrote this. My anger is like molten lava instead of a fire. It's like slow but always there. Maybe I'm like a volcano then. I'll be angry for 1,000 years, or ready to be mad forever. Like there's always stuff moving. My anger is living. Not like a parasite, but just like all my other feelings. But this one's suppressed, which puts it under pressure. When the valve releases, it's more intense than anything else. I won't ever run out either, even if I scream for 1,000 years. The more I understand, the more anger there is to feel. It becomes tangible. I can't release it if I can't feel. I think sometimes I learn too much too fast. But it's all necessary. I can't release things if I don't know what they are. So I'm mad a little all the time the way I'm sad a little all the time. I can't be angry though. I learned that very young. I can feel other things like sadness or displeasure or loviness. Anger isn't something that's allowed for me. All the anger gets reserved for men. Most of the time they can be mad about whatever they want, whenever, at any level of anger, no questions. If I'm not calm, poised, collected, thoughtful, thankful, happy, to see you, everything, effortlessly, people will see me as unstable, incomplete, slipping up. There's never an acceptable time for a woman to yell, unless she's yelling out of pain or sadness. Releasing anger is not an activity suited for women. But women are angry, like over things men will never feel or understand, and they cause this anger. Then they say swallow it, all without realizing they're doing anything. Smile. You should be thanking me. Calm down. Relax. And that's when you see a girl's eyes. So, women are conditioned to reject their own anger. Imagine if you had feelings you understand but no way to speak, no writing tools, or no guides to follow to externalize them. It feels like I have no way to get this anger out of me. I don't know how to process or express anger. I know that I feel angry, but it's like it's trapped. Mark Twain said, "Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than anything on which it is poured." He won't answer my DMs, so I'm out of luck asking him where to pour it and how to do it. There are almost no media representations that show an acceptance of women's expression of anger, unless she's gained points, conforming to some ideal role that earns her the right to anger only in that context, like a mother yelling at her children, or a female CEO in a suit yelling at her team. Of the women I talked to, I asked, how does the widespread rejection of women's anger affect your relationship with your own? Someone said shame, guilt. Someone said, I've taught myself to suppress and ignore it. Someone said, I'll never be the person I was before I experienced anger and was told to stay silent for the first time. I get angry around the people I can trust with my emotions, someone said. I prefer to have calm discussions and be direct instead of letting it become anger. If I am rightfully angry, I prefer to take some time alone and then address it, another person said. I feel like that's kind of the problem, at least for me. If we want a chance to be listened to, we have to swallow our anger and shape it into something approachable and quiet and non-threatening, something unrecognizable. Anger is a hard, ugly, sharp, and unsightly thing. And I was punished for showing this messy, unladylike thing until eventually I started doing it myself without even realizing it. I started thinking about all the things that make me angry and how unfair it is, and how less privileged women have it even worse. Then guess what? I got more upset. But I started to process it. I couldn't find an answer. I talked to so many people, even Mark Twain, and no one was able to tell me how to be mad. After talking and complaining with my friends about how I just realized this is unfair, and I don't deserve to be spoken to like that, and oh my God, you'll never believe the audacity of this man. I'll call you when I'm off work. Misogyny made me mad and took away my ability to yell about it. I realized while making this, calling your friend who gets it, who understands and will happily accept the sharp, big, ugly, yelling anger that is actually just as beneficial as meditation, I think. Being a screaming woman feels, if people see it, like a crime almost. That's unless you're with another woman screaming, and then you yell together, and you create a force field. In your little bubble, you can step out of the world. Suddenly, I understand my anger, and so do the other girls around me. It isn't so hard to let out then. So I guess the answer is talking about it and love. Sorry, lame, predictable, but it looks like if you run from a situation straight to someone who loves you, you just might be able to yell about it before your body's habit shoves it away. Moral of the story is, anger is a woman's sport. I love my people, and I don't feel so pissed off anymore.
Today, we are truly privileged to witness a significant moment in Haley's journey. This will be the last 14 East Live that she will grace us with her performance as a student. Haley, our esteemed leader, editor-in-chief, hails from St. Louis, Missouri, and graduated with her bachelor's in journalism after the Winter Quarter, and will walk in 3 weeks and 1 day. She has chosen to participate this year, marking her final year with a memorable performance. Let's all appreciate Haley's collection of things I have rejected.
Hi. Short chapters of things I have rejected. Chapter 1, life isn't fair. I have always been considered stubborn. I often know what I want, how I want it, and where. I don't consider myself incapable of compromise. In fact, I encourage it. I'm happiest when and only when everyone is happy. This meant that birthday parties were really stressful for me as a kid. I would try to make sure that everyone had a friend, everyone had a snack, everyone was having a fun time and felt included. This formula of stubbornness is mixed in well with a deeply ingrained argumentative nature that makes for an interesting cocktail anytime I run into anything that feels unjust. This arguing proved to be nothing short of a nuisance for my poor parents, who were doing anything just to get me to listen to a simple command without the dreaded why. These fits of questions, followed often by a fit of tantrums, would prove to be the result of many timeouts, lectures, and groundings. After a particularly argumentative fit where I questioned why I had to be the one to help my dad in the garage, when that's normally my brother's job, my DS was taken from my hands, and I was both grounded and subjected to the worst job there is for a young child, holding the flashlight for my dad. This was the deepest sense of injustice for an 8-year-old Haley. Not only could I not play Nintendo Dogs for 3 whole days, but I was subjected to the lowest rung of garage jobs. The only thing worse than having to do this was picking up dog poop. I whined deep and loud. I watched my mom place my DS on top of the kitchen shelf, a place I could only reach by dragging the heavy kitchen counter chairs over and standing on my tippy toes. To complete such a feat such as this without making noise and putting it back before they noticed often proved too hard for me, as I was barely standing 4 feet and 5 inches at the time. So I knew what I did best. I argued. Mom, this isn't fair, I insisted. You know what comes next to this response. Life isn't fair, Haley. My mom breathed out while pointing to the garage door as she walked away. This didn't make sense to me as a child. I wanted to shout. Mother, don't you understand? You make these rules surrounding my life. You have the power to make it fair, and I have the power to try to make people see when things aren't. I have very little autonomy, and as my mother, you set the boundaries of where I can go and when. My bedtime, my screen time, my meals, and my schedule. It's all determined by you. Please see, Mother. See that in your hands you hold the faculty to make this situation just, tilt the scales of justice, and make it so the world is balanced. But I didn't get to say any of this because my mom had already started vacuuming. I ended up holding the flashlight for about 20 minutes and got my DS back the next day. Nothing was ever as bad as my imagination when I was a kid. My deep dissatisfaction with injustice is one of the traits I never really grew out of. I have a lot of autonomy now as I stand on this stage at 21 years old, but still lack the understanding of the phrase, life isn't fair. True, things out of our control can happen to us, things we didn't ask for or things we didn't deserve. I try not to ruminate on these things, chalking them up to chance. I definitely didn't deserve how some people took to treating me over the years. Laughs and whispers at lunch tables, empty promises, and unfulfilled relationships. However, I don't think we are powerless. We have a lot of power. I knew that when I fought tooth and nail for 5 more minutes of TV time. I knew that when I had to fight to be heard in newsrooms. I know that now as I enter into the world of unanswered emails and the rat race of pushing my resume into the hands of anyone who will take it. I have to believe that my life is in my hands and that I have the power to change things that are unfair. I can't feel like a child with no autonomy in life. This postgraduate life has been a whirlwind of picking up bartender shifts and going to bed at 4 a.m. I have more autonomy than I've ever had. Very little demands or schedules control me, and yet I have been sitting in the passenger seat of my life. I have worked hard since high school to try and find a place and a career I love, and it feels really unfair that I haven't. But I won't say die. I know it isn't fair, but it doesn't matter. It's hard being a kid and being told life isn't fair because you're being told no. But now as an adult, I reject that feeling. I won't be told no. Life is unfair, but I have a lot of power in the process. No, I'm not Lady Justice. I do not hold the scales. However, I'll be damned if I don't yell and shout and stomp and climb up to try to tip them in a way that does feel fair. This summer I have an internship with WBEZ. It took months. It took screaming and yelling and ranting and emails. It took a dozen of follow-up emails and many tears shed. But I couldn't be happier. In the fall, I'll be heading to Northwestern for grad school. I am desperately trying to bend things slightly in my favor, just like when I did when I was 8, and inevitably would try to move the kitchen chairs to try and reach for the Nintendo DS on top of the shelf. Chapter 2 and 3, Criticism and Help. Being a journalist and a people pleaser are 2 things that don't fit well on a Venn diagram. While the world expects perfection out of journalists, the pursuit of perfection takes a lot of editing in the meantime. I've grown a lot in the past couple of years, welcoming constructive and sometimes even harsh criticism with open arms. Okay, so my arms might be a little less open, but I really am trying. I look forward to critiques on my writing, and I want to hear how I can prove myself for people that I love. But I'm still not perfect. My entire life, I took criticism as a personal attack to my abilities and my character instead of an effort to make something good, possibly great. My walls are certainly up. In fact, my walls,
forged of tungsten and steel, backed by a militia of men ready to defend my ideas and performances. They scream in unison, "She is capable and all her ideas are fantastic and great and perfect." And they scream with their sharpened spears and swords. Except there is no well-regulated militia ready to defend my honor. It's just me blurring out how others couldn't possibly understand what I create or how hard I have worked. I actually do have 2 specific requirements for giving me criticism. They must be layered in compliments, and I mean laying them down heavy. I want everything you like about what I did and how it was basically perfect except maybe one thing. And the admiration has got to be palpable. The critiques have to be reasonable. I shouldn't have to work too hard to fix the thing that's wrong. Honestly, if it takes less than 5 minutes, that's preferred. I like to think I've gotten better with my rules. In my time leading at 14 East, I've had to balance a whole lot of opinions and critiques. I've really appreciated what being in a collaborative atmosphere has done for my creative process, as well as my slow and steady progress towards accepting critiques. However, there have been times that this acceptance has turned into complicity and even quitting. There are times when I wish I had the courage to reject criticism. There are conversations and stories that I'd wish I'd stucken up for more. Actions that I wish I defended instead of trying to avoid conflict of fear or looking stupid or wrong. I'm always open to hearing a different viewpoint. I think that's an important trait to have in being a journalist. In the past month, my morals have been questioned in a way I didn't think was possible. What does it mean to serve a community? Is neutrality a stance that serves my reporting? What does neutrality mean in 2024? Am I right? It's the same thing as sitting in a swivel chair when you're little. Your brother takes the back of the chair and runs as fast as he can in a circle. The distinguishable figures and items in the room start to blur into just shapes and colors. These questions in my mind do the same. They mix and fuse with each other until it feels like I knew less than when I started. Your head feels light, and then dizzy, and then nauseating, and you sit there trying to gain your bearings, and I'm dizzy, left with no answers, and still through it all, your brother will laugh. I miss my brother. Here's what I do know. The sun rises every day, so should you, even if that's at 2 p.m. You owe the people around you the best possible version of yourself. We're not singular in this world, and we all owe each other. If you walk away from a situation knowing you did your best with what you knew at the time, you will die with little regrets. People will disappoint you, and you will disappoint them. Neither of these things are indicative of a good or bad person. Call your mom, she misses you. And you and I should probably get rid of TikTok. My slow acceptance of criticism has gone with my slow acceptance of accepting help. I have often rejected help. I was always complimented about my independence as a child. I was quick to walk, quick to read, and most certainly quick to talk. My parents figured it was easier to leave me alone than to face my wrath. It was better to leave me to my fractions and figure it out than to be yelled at for trying to tell me to do anything at all. I live in an apartment with high cabinets, like really tall. I'm also the shortest side of the little 4-man band I found myself living in. My roommates, all towering from 5'8" to 6'3", fetch out the finest of china, our Target plastic cups, with ease. My task is no easy feat. I open the bottom cabinets, step inside them, then climb onto the counter. I grab onto the bottom of the top cabinets to hoist myself up and then reach up. I'll carefully get the cup, and I'll carefully get back down. "Let us help you, Haley," my roommates will plead. "No," I insist, chin sticking up proudly. "Look how brave I am. Glory to the ever-brave Haley for never, ever needing help." I think in the process I have martyred myself. It would be easier for my roommates to help with the cup when they're there. I'm not brave, I'm just bruised. My Everest climb for cups often result in a bruise or two from time to time. In my martyrdom, I suffer from grievances of my own design, like many eldest sisters do. I would pick up too much and have a hard time putting it all down. I then would complain how heavy it all was without even asking for a hand. I'll just convince myself that it's easier if I do it. It'll be better if I complete it myself. These people don't appreciate the work I do. They will never understand. I can't stand that they do nothing. Why don't they do anything? I hate these people. I don't hate these people. I desperately want to be the one they depend on. Their phone a friend for who wants to be a millionaire. My worth, often attached to how helpful I can be, fuels me. I don't hate these people. I love these people in my life. I just hate my self-sacrificial nature that fuels a sense of narcissism and superiority that trickles into a nasty well of resentment. Working for 14 East, one of the first things I realized was that I was really bad at task delegation. I didn't know when it was fair to ask for help, and I still struggle with it. It was my job to tell people what to do. There have been plenty of tasks others could have done, and instead I did them with haste and shittily. Over the last 2 quarters, I'd like to think I've gotten a little better at this. I've figured out when I have too much on my plate. When I start going back for a second and third helping, I start to share with those at my table. My loved ones love to help just as much as I love to help them. I'm learning to let go of the martyr. I still climb the counters, but every once in a while, I'll let my roommate grab the cup. Chapter 4, Love. My life has been surrounded with love. Outward, abundant, unconditional, and determined love. How could I reject love? It was the soil that I grew in. I think it's fair to say that my attitude can make me a conundrum of contradictions. Life isn't fair, except yes it is, and I can make it. I cringe at the Google suggestions and critiques on my decisions, but I also want to be perfect. I was raised in a home full of love, but it seemed like I could never get a grasp of some of it. There is a really hard to understand and hard to speak about and hard to write about hatred within myself. I mean, I have never liked anyone who's in love with themselves. Let's get that straight. But I don't think you should hate yourself. Maybe you don't have to love yourself either. Maybe you can just be. I'm not really sure. I have many questions about love. I have many questions in general. What pajamas does the Pope wear? Why does DeSantis wear shoe lifts? I'll never know. However, I'm growing a lot. I'm learning a lot. But I'm determined to know more about love, for myself, for others. There's a couple of ways I've pushed love that I should have wrapped myself around. I would go on first dates, like a lot of first dates, way too many to count. On these first dates, I decided that I was going to let the other person do the talking, like all of it. My thought process is that people like to talk about themselves. They would like talking to me because they like talking about their life. These dates were more like traps to get people to fall in love with me. That was the goal. I needed people to love me, but more importantly, like me. By the fourth date, even if it got that far, I would drop it. I'd figure that we just weren't clicking, and I just kept trying, and I just kept screaming to myself into dirty mirrors, why is nothing fucking clicking? Why have my peers all had their high school heartbreaks and college cahoots while I was still there psychoanalyzing if the lesbian across from me was going to pay for the coffee or if I was going to cosplay Mask? I realized pretty late that I was just trying to get people to fall in love with me and not focus on if I even liked them. I was far too scared to crack open, to let people pry their thumbs or a quarter maybe into the particularly odd pistachio shell that is myself. You've got to let yourself be seen to be loved. I know that. But I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to scoff at stupid pet names and make my roommates who were in love feel stupid, young and stupid and performative fake love. I rejected the notion of love because I felt like it had rejected me. I met Maggie May when she was visiting her childhood best friend for the week in Chicago. She, stern and attentive, had opened herself up to romantic love. Her walls were impenetrable to her friends and family, but Maggie, ever the romantic, had fallen and hit the ground too many times to count. She chased love, pinned it down, and tried to defeat it. It wasn't up to me. She had her sights and started to chase me, and I didn't mind being chased. There's very little ego left in me to admit that she has completely ensnared me. She is so observant. She remembers everything I tell her, my likes and my dislikes, my loves and my hates. She craves to show her devotion in every matter. It also doesn't hurt that she's beautiful. She is tall and has these inquisitive green eyes, and I can't always tell what she's thinking. She is so full of passion. It fuels her loves and lights her fire to the burst of anger she has at any injustice. I love it all. I've never questioned her love for me. It was shockingly apparent even before the many flights from Dallas to Chicago she took to see me for short days almost each month. After a short couple of months, she moved from Dallas to Chicago. She's taken this city by storm and has taken me by surprise. Her ability to adapt, her bravery. I swear I could marry her. Young love. I hope I'm not stupid. Not that I would care anyway. Opening up to love has lifted the weight I wasn't aware I was bearing. However, it wasn't until recently I realized I rejected the other love in my life. I closed myself off to my family. A lot of my family accepted my sexuality. My mom's side had been nothing but proud to show me off. They were even more happy when I got to show Ms. Maggie May off to everybody. She was my show horse, and she sat through every introduction. However, I had still yet to show her off to my dad's side of the family. I had written them off. They were conservatives who loved Trump and had starkly different views to my established Democrat family. I'd also written off their capacity to love. My Aunt Diane was a planner, focused deeply on making sure that everyone was content. We always had a second Christmas at her house. She wanted to have time to give us her gifts. She was careful to plan the exact right pizza orders, not too many cheese, but enough sausages too. Carefully placed meat and cheese boards were all over the house. Too much food for our small band to eat. Life cares very little for these plans that we have. My Aunt Diane's funeral was in February. Sitting in the front row of the funeral home chapel, I watched my father cry in a way I had never seen. My grandfather hugged me in a way that felt real for the first time in my life. How was I supposed to mourn someone? How do I mourn someone that I didn't get to know to their full extent? This had never been taught to me. What had I missed by moving away and never telling her about who I loved? I wasn't sneaky about Maggie. My Instagram had little pockets of her everywhere. My Aunt Diane and her daughter Vicky happened to do some sleuthing and figured it out. They spoke and planned together how they can make the process of coming out as smooth and easy as it could be for me. Vicky told my mom after the funeral. My mom played softball for years. You think she's in cool with lesbians? Vicky laughed to my mom. My mom told me over the phone about this conversation she had. Vicky wanted you to know that Aunt Diane died so happy that you were happy. I cried on the Brown line. Not my first transit cry, not my last. I told Maggie very drunkenly on a rocky Uber ride up Lakeshore Drive. I told her what Vicky had told my mom, that Aunt Diane had died happy for us. Maggie started to cry just a little. She apologized. It's just sad, she said. Isn't it? I slightly laughed. We held the rest of the way with silent and slightly drunk tears staining our cheeks. I took Maggie to a fish fry at my grandparents'. Country music filled the air as I watched my grandparents give Maggie a big hug. She pointed out cicadas to Vicky's son Theo. The vegetable oil bubbled up surrounding the freshly caught fish. My feelings too bubbled up. How can I reconcile that love looks many different ways? How can I make up for the lost time with my family? How can I continue to love my family from miles away? I'm rejecting the swirl of questions. I'm gonna eat my fish, and I'm gonna live a life full of love, for myself and for others.
Hi everyone. My grandma always says, delay but not deny. I can hear her voice saying it now. She always says it in repetition as if to cement it in stone. Delay but not denied, delay but not denied. It's a mantra of faith that my family has been instilling in me since I was young. It's actively choosing hope in the face of anything or anyone that says no. It's turning the no's into not yet's. In my family, rejection doesn't happen to knock you down, make you sad, or steal your confidence. Rather, rejection is here to point you in the direction that you may not have seen before. Turning my rejections into redirections got me through those early adolescent years when the people you want to be friends with don't want to be your friends. It got me through my college application process, both rounds of it, when despite applying to 13 plus schools, I still had little idea of where I wanted to end up. Rejection letters came, as they do, but instead of putting my head down and giving up, I channeled my grandma's voice and saw the no's as pushing me towards the place I was meant to be. Without a conscious effort, the positive butterfly effect following a no may not be immediately apparent. But for many of us, the better things in our life came out of someone or something's rejection. I wanted to test this theory by talking to 4 different people I came across. It was fascinating to see how eager everyone was to answer, and even more fascinating how often the stories overlapped, even with my own. The question I asked was simple. What's the best thing in your life that came out of rejection? Staying close to home with Emma Nodi. When I approached the Paul Jr. Emma Nodi, the first thing that caught my eye was the elaborate wall art behind her. Rainbow-colored stars floated around, large cutout letters that spelled, "At OMS, you matter, you belong, you succeed, OMS unite." The handcrafted message adorned the wall of the Office of Multicultural Student Success where Emma works. Emma spent many shifts perfecting the wall and cutting out each and every star. While Emma has been at the Paul for 3 years now, being 40 minutes away from home wasn't always the plan. She applied to 7 colleges in her senior year of high school, with her top 2 being Northwestern University and New York University. When they ultimately rejected her, Emma said she remembers being extremely saddened. She had entered this college experience with the whole plan, but was left with only a question of, so now what am I going to do? Luckily for Emma, that closed door sent her up to one that was already open, home. Emma went back to the drawing board and ended up choosing DePaul and a new major. She sees this rejection as a gift instead. Now after being in college, she knows she wouldn't have been ready to move all the way to New York. While she'll never know what NYU would have been like, Emma's gotten to experience so many things since being at DePaul. She's been able to get scholarships and research opportunities that would have been a little lot more scarce at NYU. Emma also said it's much easier to travel 40 minutes to go home than 12 hours. I would have struggled a lot. Being rejected definitely helped me. I thought I should do it, basically. She laughs. For Emma, the door closing on her dreams in New York opened up new doors where everything finally fell into place. Losing out on that picture in her head turned out to be less of a loss and more of a gain of a happiness she didn't know she could have here at DePaul. When our dreams are hit with rejection letters, it's so easy to feel that all hope is lost. But so often we're steps away from living a dream that's just right for us. hitting a home run with Xavier Markin. I met 15-year-old Xavier Markin at the Belmont and Ashland Whole Foods. He had just come from school and was dressed head to toe in his JROTC uniform. He seemed shy, but was still willing to talk with me. He asked me to clarify what I meant by rejection, but after that, we jumped right in. I learned that Xavier was already in high school, and while youth is often associated with naivety, he had already experienced rejection and eventually redirection as well. He had tried out for the football team at school, and the coach told me no. Xavier was hardly upset when he recalled this memory. Instead, he said, I realized, after that, I didn't really like football in general. Though Xavier's answers to my questions were very straightforward, it was apparent he didn't let anything stop him. Instead of football, he tried out for baseball and ended up being a great fit for him. So I guess it was a better option because I was able to go work for different sports or things that I actually like instead of things that I don't really like, Xavier said. Xavier's memory of trying out for sports brings me back to my grandma's message of delayed but not denied. Xavier may have had to wait longer to find a sport he loved, but if he had given up at that sign of the initial rejection and denial, he never would have found it at all. And who knows, he might not be the person he is today. Building connections with Kat Rodriguez. When I met Kat, I stole her away from intently working on her computer. It was midday on a Thursday, a day many of the fall students like to call the Fall Friday because there are a lack of Friday classes. Kat, however, hadn't called off for the weekend yet. She's a junior studying marketing at the fall, and her days are filled with great amounts of homework, intense classes, and searching for internships in a tough market. Despite all this, Kat kept a smile on her face throughout our conversation. She says her most annoying rejections have come from searching for internships in a tough market, which we all know is getting a lot harder. I just wanted to leave them alone and not send a follow-up or anything, Kat said when describing her feelings about rejection. She used every trick in the book, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, and even old-school coffee chats, but still she struggled to get that offer letter. But instead of taking their unresponsiveness as a rejection, Kat saw it as a chance to build a connection. Rather than merely moving on to the next job listing, she makes the most out of each rejection by keeping in contact with the recruiters. You still keep moving forward in a sense, so that's what I've done. I've gotten the recruiters to email me back and say, you know what, if anything pops up, you'll be the first person we reach out to. So, talking to Kat felt like a relief amid my own navigations of summer internships. I was comforted to know that all the emails reading, we decided to select another candidate, were likely not only sent to me. It was also reassuring to hear her sense of acceptance and maintain positivity. Despite it all, you keep moving forward. Redirecting your path with Luke Safety. Before our conversation had started, Luke told me all about the leather jacket they were wearing. It was their first time wearing it after studying abroad in Berlin. It was vintage and had dozens of pockets, but no one had noticed it yet. The jacket was quite cool, and it broke the ice and was already a free-flowing conversation. Luke said they thought about this idea of redirection quite frequently. From our jacket conversation, I could tell that they were a very observant person in both how they perceive and the causes effects in their life. Luke studies film at the Fall and is set to graduate in about 2 months. 4 years ago, however, high school Luke was hoping to take a different path. Being from the suburbs, they were always planning to apply to the Fall and enter into a creative field. Luke acted all through high school and wanted to extend his theater experience at the Fall's Coveted Theater School. Luke applied for the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in acting, toured the school, and sent in the self-tape, but they never got a call back. They were on loan and are waiting for this notification in their email box. The Paul's Theater School is a conservatory program that is ranked top 10% in the country. They get roughly 1,900 applicants and only 120 BFAs or lectures. Still, statistics do little to banish the pain of rejection. I was super crushed. I cried about it in my car when I got that email, Luke said. After that initial shock, Luke decided that the only thing they could do was pick their head up and pivot. I still wanted to do something creative in my life, and I already got accepted into Paul, to school, so I'm well, with film school, you don't have to apply for it, you just do it, Luke said. Their eyes light up when I talk about film, and if this passion wasn't enough to confirm they made the right decision, everything else was. Luke entered college right around the height of COVID-19, and at this time, live theater was suffering. That, and Luke isn't always a fan of the infamous theater kids. It's a very good thing I didn't become like them, because that would be a very different person. Luke found it didn't need to go far to find a new, better path after the initial setback. The theater school is just a short train ride away from the College of Computing and Digital Media, where the film school is located. Luke's story reminds me of all the times I've been stuck in a stop train, unable to make my desired destination at the busy time. It reminds me also of the couple of times the red line skipped my stop entirely and led me to think of a new plan at the drop of a hat. Though annoying, none of these red line offenses affected more than an hour of my day. Like Luke, all I had to do was look for another path, in a direction that luckily wasn't too far out of reach. Each story of redirection brought me back to the moment I decided to forego every plan I had for myself and pursue a career in film. This was a full 180 for me, considering I had dreamed of being a doctor my whole life. I was going to be the first doctor in the family. But after years of sitting in science classes I did not want to be in, I rejected this dream and decided to try a new path. This new dream, however, didn't come without its own fair share of rejections. A year after changing my major, I now have a stack full of no's from film sets, internships, and film festivals. Rejection is something we cannot run from, and trust me, I've tried. I pretended to not care about the girls who turned on my friendship in third grade. I deleted all the unfortunate emails from my inbox, and I tend to scroll past Instagram posts of events I wasn't invited to. I've done every trick in the book to escape feelings of rejection. However, I found that acceptance was the only thing that truly helped me soothe all the bruises of rejection. Accepting that all of these denials were simply a delay, telling me to wait for something better to come.